Hello folks, welcome to the show. Jack Zhao on East West with G&E TV. At G&E TV, we try to stretch our focus to cover everything. Sometimes we even cover problems or issues internationally. Here, of course, everybody enjoys the American freedom, the American materialized civilization. But there are somewhere, somehow, people are still living in poverty. Even though we have people here living in poverty, but there are large people are in their own poverties. So thanks to the efforts of many people, many organizations, such as Community First initiatives, problems are being at least noticed, helps are being provided to certain areas such as Cambodia. Today, joining me is a good friend of mine, Mr. John Whaley. He is the current president of the Community First Initiative organization, which is a nonprofit. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And just would say that actually I'm the chairman of the board, and Pierre Mingai is my co-founder of this is now president, just to make sure. Okay.
Right. Well, I'm even happier because finally we got a chance to touch about the community, right? So the Community First initiative, the term itself, the name itself, looks very interesting. Can you give us a little background information about this organization, please?
Yes, we started it in 2008, and we do community development work in Cambodia. We put the name community in there because it's all about the communities. It's not about us going in and saying, here's what you need. It's about the communities. It's about knowing what they feel they need, and then helping with initiatives that will make it possible for them to live a better life. We work in rural Cambodia as opposed to in the cities. In fact, we work far enough out that there aren't very many nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, NGOs, everybody calls them there. There are not many of those working where we work, and for several reasons. But our work deals with helping people with water, agriculture, healthcare, education, and that sort of thing. And the important part of it for us is that what we do in our programs is sustainable. So that it's not us being there all the time, it's us providing certain initiatives that then those in the villages there and their leaders take over.
I see. In other words, the organization is established here in this country.
That's correct.
And as an organization, you outreach to rural areas in Cambodia to reach the community that needs the help.
That's correct.
Right. All right. Such a great program. And even nowadays, we really think that we think ourselves too much. We seldom think about others. As a matter of fact, when the whole world is becoming smaller and smaller as a village, you're really talking about your next door neighbor, where you think about anywhere such as Cambodia. So what do you do there in addition to or including help them with their water, their food, their education, stuff like that?
Yes, those are our primary areas of focus there. We look first at what are the needs in these areas, and you look at Cambodia, particularly rural Cambodia. You find that a fairly small percentage of people have access to clean water. Even less have access to sanitation.
You see.
The diets are poor in nutrition,
You see?
lots of rice. So they have in fact, rice is the main diet for many people. So they have high instance of diabetes.
Yeah, you're right. You're talking about sugar, yeah.
Yeah, turns into sugar, and we have there's lots of cases of diabetes. The poor water, I mean, you go over there and you look at a well, perhaps a well that they've dug, and no protection around it. So when it rains, many things flow in besides water.
Yeah, I know that.
It often looks almost like milk. It has so much other things in the water. And, you know, you find people, well, small children, babies, die. People are sick a lot.
Yeah, of course.
If you're a parent, you know, you have to wonder every time you give your child a drink if you're causing
exactly.
sickness or
yeah,
worse.
I know what you mean. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So these were things that encouraged us to want to work out in these rural areas. There are a lot of NGOs in Cambodia. Many of them work.
What is an NGO?
Oh, non-governmental organization. I'm sorry, nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
Yeah,
Nonprofit.
there are a lot of nonprofits there, but many of them work closer into the cities. Where we chose to work is where there aren't very many because these people have the greatest needs. So that's kind of why we chose this community.
I know,
We focused our work in the last couple of years in a community called Sensok. It's a community of 16 villages and about 10,000 people.
All right.
And when we got there were a couple of wells that were providing clean water.
Yeah.
Where people somebody had some money and they had one put in.
I see.
But by and large, that was it. We went to a village called Smatch, and we looked at the wells they had, and they were the kind of wells are called ring wells, where they dig a hole and then they put concrete rings down, and then there's cement and a ring at the top.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And then you put a pail down and pull it out on a rope.
Like that.
The problem is, as they explained to us, they couldn't drink the water of any of the ring wells. And in fact, all but one they couldn't use on their plants because it killed them. It was salt water. So they were essentially without a source of clean water.
I see.
Now, in some places in the rural areas, there'll be a source of clean water, but it's a good distance away.
Yeah.
So usually it falls on the women to spend their time fetching water.
To carry water.
And carrying it.
In a jar or a bucket or something.
On their heads or something. And, or the children too. In fact, a lot of children don't go to school because they're busy getting clean water. In this village, that wasn't the case because there wasn't a source close enough to do that. Water is a really very important element when you think about fighting poverty.
I mean, of course, you're talking about poverty. You were describing about how much they need in help, almost everything in life. But my question is that, how come in the first place you pick up Cambodia?
Well, that's an interesting question. It had to do with several factors. One is the need there. When you talk about poverty in Cambodia, you really have to understand something about its history. A lot of our viewers today won't remember the Vietnam War, or at least much about it.
All right, please, yes.
But back in the 60s and up through part of the 70s, the Vietnam War was raging. Vietnam kind of curls around a little bit around Cambodia.
Yes.
And the North was fighting the South. We were on the south side of the South.
Yes.
The North was controlled by Ho Chi Minh and had a communist government. As the soldiers from the North wanted to come down to the South, And in those days, early days, they weren't actually dressed as soldiers. They were just infiltrators who came down and into the South and worked to disrupt and do that sort of thing. They came through what became known as the Ho Chi Minh Trail through Cambodia. America began under President Nixon to bomb that trail. I saw one fact that America dropped more bombs in Cambodia during that period than we dropped in World War II on Europe in World War II.
Oh God, oh God.
I don't know that that's verifiable, but there were a lot of bombs, and you still see craters there. Sometimes used as fish ponds in some parts, which is kind of interesting. But in any case, as that happened, the Lon Nol government began to become weaker and weaker, and there were several communist groups trying to take power, and the one that later became known as the Khmer Rouge took over in January of 1975. First thing they did was they drove all of the people out of the cities. They emptied the cities. The capital, Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, they emptied those cities. They just drove people out. They told them that Americans were going to bomb them and they were making them safe. But they told anybody that didn't go that if they stayed, they'd be shot. So I'm not sure what kind of protection they were offering. But in any case, and that began a rule of almost 4 years in which they set out to systematically kill all of the educated people. In fact, if you wore glasses, they assumed you knew how to read and were educated and you got shot. Or, there was some other way you were killed. About 2 million people died during that reign of terror. When they got to the countryside, children were separated from parents, families were split up. It was just, for 4 years that went on.
I see.
So when that was over, I mean, families and the country in general was just non-functioning. In fact, they even blew up the central bank because they wanted this to be take it back to a pure agrarian society. And so everything was done by trade. They didn't want currency. That was too civilized, too westernized,
too
I guess.
civilized.
So they wanted to go back to this agrarian society. So what we see, from those who came out of that, and even though it ended in '79, their rule, it was another decade. Well, the Khmer Rouge and other groups went to the mountains and came down, and there was all kinds of civil war. What we saw that people came out of that is that the kind of knowledge that would be passed from one generation to another, that had been cut. It was no longer, that didn't happen.
I see.
You had a lot of people living in the country that didn't have their roots there. A lot of people were just settlers out there. They didn't have ownership to land.
Yeah, they were driven out.
They were just, they were driven out. And so now you go into the countryside and, people say, well, they live out there, don't they? Why aren't they experts?
Let's take a short moment out. When we come back, we'll find out the sad story of the villagers there, and also, of course, the great job you're doing. I'm really touched. I started to get touched. So stay with us. We'll be back.